Alright, and I do believe that I am live on Twitch once again. Welcome. I'm the Chronic Phoenix, and yeah, no idea what this is gonna be other than messing around trying to develop this platformer idea out further. Well, I say idea, let's be honest. It's not an idea, it's more of just a. Game development, make it up as you go. Ugh. Yeah, I tried the whole Twitch thing, I think a year ago. Did for a couple months. Tried to go real hardcore with schedules and stuff, and oh boy, did my health not like that. So we're back a year or more later, something like that. No, definitely more than a year later. And yeah, I'm trying it again. Figure I'm going to be spending my time just sort of experimenting around with this platformer anyway. Might as well talk about it. So, let's run down what I have so far. So, basically, a little bit of background. I've spent, who knows how many years. I've been working in working in indie game development for quite a while now, ever since I was a freshman in high school, but it was very on and off for a long time. Wasn't really until last year, actually, yeah. Last year that I started to take things a little bit more seriously. Started with a VR project, the idea of which was to make sort of a magic sandbox game where you would physically draw like runes and stuff in the air to cast spells, and then it was going to have a whole like element mixing system with like super deep spell interaction. One day I will make this game, but not today, because my gosh, oh boy, VR is something to develop for currently. Like I got a decent ways, and by decent ways I mean I had a working prototype of the system, of the spell drawing system, which I'm very happy with. I gotta say, I developed out all of the whole system for recognizing drawn shapes in the air, by splitting them down into lines, curves, and corners, so that rather than trying to read the entire symbol that is drawn, the system would just read individual shapes, which has two main benefits. The first one being that if you messed up on part of the symbol, you could just redraw from that part rather than needing to redraw the entire symbol. The second key one is that it sped up the actual recognition of the system, because the system didn't have to wait until you drew the entire symbol. It would recognize and sort of narrow down the selection as you were drawing the symbol, which could be used both for making it a bit easier, sort of a prediction of what symbol you were going to draw, and making it a bit easier for it to, or making it easier on the player by having the system predict somewhat of what you were drawing, but also just making it quicker. So when you drew the final like shape, it was much faster to actually spawn in or do whatever the spell was going to do. I was very happy with that system. It was the rest of it that got a little bit out of my wheelhouse, and by a little bit I mean completely. And then Unity, the game engine that I'm using, was updating, and it was making its old integration of VR, which was makeshift because it was around when VR was first starting to come around. It was outdating that and starting a new version, and I tried to update the project, and boy, I could not get it working for the life of me, like, not even sort of. So, this was a couple months into the process, and I was like, you know what? It's time for a break. So I took a break, and didn't really touch game dev for a while. Then I picked up, then I participated in, what is it? A game jam. Whose game jam was it? It was GMTK, Game Maker's Toolkit, the YouTube channel. The channel runs he runs a game jam every year. I've participated in it a few years, but man, that one really just I really liked the idea that I came up with, and just the progress I made on it for me was phenomenal. Clearly, oh, that VR game had really amped up my skills. So then I took that and continued to develop that out until it was sort of a full experience. I wanted to make it into a full game, but never quite got there. It is a fairly polished and playable experience, but it's just that it's more of a experience or a demo than a actual game, unfortunately, because I had a complete lack of any idea or really desire to actually figure out an end game for my games. Rather, I was just like, well, all I have to do is create a fun concept, and then I'll just make it a endless game where you're just aiming for a high score, right? Those are fun. Those are easy. Yeah, it turns out they're not easy to make good, because you have to make it compelling. And without a story or good setting or something to compel people to keep playing a game, you have to make the act of playing the game itself and the act of achieving a high score super compelling. It's sort of like when you simplify anything down, all of the faults become much more apparent than if it's more complex in nature. So if you create something very simple, it has to be much more polished and much more fun in order to actually hook people than something more complex that has more going for it. So that failed. I mean, it sort of failed. I learned a unbelievable amount from that project, which was called Oboe, Out of Body, Out of Home. You can check it out on my itch.io page. After that, took another break from game dev, and then towards the end of last year, I decided that what I really needed to do was focus on endgame, actually making sort of the end of a game that was interesting to play rather than just making a high score thing. And I figured the easiest way to do that, would be to create a platformer, and because I love platformers, and create levels. So along with creating a platformer, which is this, it has an integrated level editor, because boy, I've tried to create platformers in the past, and manually laying out levels, no. Just no. It's terrible. It's awful. My gosh, I don't know how anyone does it. I don't understand. Level designers. Truly incredible. So, I set about creating a level editor that just continued to get more and more complex as time went on, because I had no direction whatsoever and still don't. This is not a game. It is really just a game development project that continues to... It's just something that I can work on, that I can sort of keep adding to or experiment with. There's no real end goal. Just a hobby, plain and simple. Might end up being a game someday, but not any day soon. So, let's run down a little bit that is going on in this game. Some of the features, not all of them. There's too much to talk about, and talking hurts both my throat and my core, because I am weak and heavily injured as a human being. Oh my gosh! I am back. But more importantly, you're back. I'll be honest, I would have never expected literally anybody to hop back on from the, well, old days. Well, good luck at the meeting, and thank you. Oh my gosh, that's oh, that's wild. That kind of made my day actually. That's crazy. Still don't know why anyone stuck around for those old streams, but I mean, oh man. Oh yeah. Where was I? So, this project, it is called Destination Level Design, because the entire purpose was to learn level design, or attempt to anyway. I actually wasn't even trying to create a platformer. Like, I was creating a platformer, but the idea was only to create it so that it sort of worked. And then the actual goal was to create, again, just a level editor that worked. And then experiment with level design and try and figure out that sort of art form and science. It's a mix of both. It's very confusing. But as I was developing, I kept developing farther and farther and making things more and more complex because that's what I really like to do in that's actually what I really like about game dev is making the more technical systems, which is a problem because I like trying to perfect them and make them really adaptable so that they can be used as independent elements in sort of whatever I'm making, which means I spend way too much time perfecting them and making them work in many situations that they will never, ever be used in. Ever. But here we are. So, what I have right now is a level editor. If I just click on this, I really need to create some custom editor stuff. There's a little bit of that going on, like this block prefabs tab. This is a custom thing for Unity, but I really need to just customize this whole level editor and just make it a editor script. In general, right now it's this level editor is very poorly set up because it is not an in-game editor, and yet it relies on being tied to the scene with actual game objects. But the scripts only run in the editor, so it's very bad design, but it works, and that's all I care about. So the way the level editor works is that there is a grid system, which you will see a visual for expanding out as I start building the level. You have all these different blocks. Each block takes up a 1x1 square on the grid. I do want to expand out the support for the level editor so that you can have sort of more differently shaped objects or even prefabs of whole level sections that will automatically sort of update themselves when they're placed in the world and connect to whatever else. And then there's a bunch of different edit modes. The first one is just blocks, so if I just select the basic building block and draw, you can see, you should be able to see the grid expanding out that just provides a visual indicator of where each point on the grid is. And then you can just, oh right, have to have gizmos enabled. You can just draw in blocks and draw them out. Simple as that. So we have the base building block. Then we have, this was maybe the second thing I added, was it? Could have been one way, well, anyway. So we have our basic blocks, we have one-way platforms or walls, depending on how you want to use them. Those, work as you would imagine. Oh, and also we have this beautifully animated cube, which is, it looks shockingly good it just does. Like look at that. It looks like soft body physics, and yet it's not at all. It's utterly faked. Completely and utterly. Don't tell anybody. No one. Our secret. It's utterly faked. Basically, it is a very poorly rigged cube that I just animated to get some basic animations going, and then I created this shader in Unity, which is also probably terrible, using the new or relatively new shader graph. It's a vertex displacement shader that does a number of different things. Um, there's a lot going on. Basically, there's three main parts to it, which should really be labeled, that affect how the vertices of the cube are displaced to make it bend and stretch and stuff. So you have a sort of following tail. So when you jump, you get that sort of stretch in the direction that you're moving. Then there is the second part of that is this new tunnel block. Which provides a dynamic, or not. I've broken the tunnels. I've been doing a lot of work on this system with the collision lately, and I seem to have broken the tunnels. Well, I can show you what what it's supposed to look like anyway. If I just go to cube, go to the shader with way too much information. Let's see if we do. Yes. So as you can see, well, if I put it on the right axis, actually, here. There we go. So as you can see, when you enter the tunnel, I don't even understand how my own system works. As you enter the tunnel, the player will, or the cube will automatically squish upon entering and then exiting the tunnel. It's a sort of dynamic squish system. And then it can also be dynamically offset as well. That was such a pain to get working right. Such an unbelievable pain. But it is excellent in motion. Like, I am so proud of that system and how the tunnels work. And I'm super proud of the tunnels because the tunnels also have a vertex displacement system. As you can see, this tunnel is made up of 5 individual sections. These 4 sections are parented to this one, so this is sort of the main block, and these are all sub-blocks. And that means a couple of different things. They can be moved together, rotated together, but in terms of tunnels, what happens is all of these get deactivated when the game starts, and this tunnel gets stretched out, and the vertices are displaced, so there's no distortion. And then also you can change the width of the tunnel opening and its sort of offset position, which the player will automatically react to when moving through it. And that does literally nothing except, it's interesting. Oh, actually, I think I know why this is broken. There should be an option. Can use tunnels. There we go. The tunnels the sort of intention of the tunnels is, there's not really any intentionality to the tunnels. Frankly, I just wanted to add this sort of dynamic squishing system to the player, and I was like, how could this be used in the game? Tunnels. There we go. But I suppose because you need to use a Boolean in this situation in order to use the tunnels, they could be something that only certain enemies or the player could get through and other things couldn't. Like blocks that you push can't go through the tunnel, player can, yada yada. But yeah, there you can see it in action. And if I were to go to the main tunnel and manually change some of its values. Boop. Why isn't... Oh, wait. No, why isn't the player updating to it? That's weird. Huh. This used to work. Very confused. Oh, right. Ha, my bad. That's, let's just put that back the way it was. I'm changing the values on the shader, which the player is not reading. The player is reading the script that controls the shader. There we go. Yeah, so as you can see, the player dynamically moves with the tunnel as it changes, and you could actually animate the tunnel, which I want to do, which would be interesting, I guess. I don't know. It'd be fun. That's all that's going on here, just experimenting with stuff. Alright, gizmos need to be on. So we have the tunnels, we have one-way blocks, which can be rotated. Oh, and this handy-dandy little indicator of where you are placing something down. That did not exist for the longest time, and let me tell you, when you're building out a level, very nice to have. Actually see what you're doing. So you can see one-way walls, they work as, well, you would think. Then we have, let's see, we have these blocks which can be moved about. They are just sort of crates. You can push them around, and they can be weighted. So this is a very recent system which, my gosh, I believe I finally have working. I have spent more than the past 2 weeks trying to get this system properly in place, and it has been 2 weeks of thinking I know why it's not working, fixing it, only to realize that not only did that not fix the system, it never should have at all. Like, the fix doesn't even make sense. It's been a very confusing and conflicting time, but I believe, knock on wood, I believe I have it working. So as you can see, these I don't know, sort of silver or metal crates are heavier than the wooden ones, and the weight stacks. There are multiple weight modes. You can have the, I forget what I called them, but you can have all of the weight for all of the blocks. You can have it set so only the highest weight of a singular item defines a sort of the pushing force of a group of blocks. And then you can have it set so that the player or whatever is doing the pushing can be set to not take weight into account at all. So it would push all of the blocks as if they had no weight whatsoever. So it wouldn't slow down the player at all. And all of these can be properly, there we go, pushed through one-way walls. A lot more difficult than it seems like it should be, I'll be honest. See, because the problem is with this system, and I can visualize this for you, is the entire system uses a custom collision system-ish, a custom-ish collision and movement system that I devised and sort of developed over the years. But if I turn gizmos on, hit play, and I need to zoom in, what you can see here are visualizations of what are known as raycasts. And a raycast is basically just a sort of line or a laser, if you will, that is shot out from a specific position in a specific direction with a specified length. If that ray hits any other collider, you can sort of see the edges of the box collider. So any object that you want to deal with collision in Unity, or presumably any three-dimensional engine, has colliders. And those are sort of simplistic shapes that just define where the physical aspect of the object is. Mostly, or used mainly in the physics engine, but also used outside of that just for determining collisions. Obviously, my game only uses boxes because everything's set to a grid, and that's all that makes sense to use, really. But that's why the system is sort of custom and sort of not, because I'm still using the box colliders inherently, because you need to. But essentially, if a ray hits any other collider, it can give you information on the distance to the hit, the object that was hit, information on the collider of the object that was hit, the exact point in world space that was hit by the ray. You just get lots of information about, everything. And so using that information, I determine whether the player should be able to move, or any other object should be able to move based upon the distance hit, how far the player was going to move over that course of the frame. If it's past the collider, you sort of trim back that movement. If the player is stuck in an object, you just push the player back out of it, so on and so forth. Now, the reason that this is very complicated when it comes to one-way platforms is that once a ray hits an object, it stops. It can't see anything past that collider. And so if you were, say, pushing this box, and it was partway through this one-way wall, as the player moves, the rays would all stop on this one-way wall, on the collider on it, and it would never be able to see the cube. So what would happen is the player would move straight through the cube because, well, it can move through the one-way wall, and it has no idea the cube is there because the rays can't hit it. The solution to this was basically to, you can see it when I'm pushing objects. Let me go over to this one. You can see all of the movable objects also display rays. But when I'm pushing it, these red lines indicate that a ray is repeating. So I devised this ray repeating system. So if a ray hits an object, and it is, it goes through a bunch of different systems to determine whether it's a physical object, whether you can pass through it, and what interactions you should have with that object. It gets very complex very fast. But it will dynamically repeat the ray. So if, actually you can see it right here. So the ray is hitting the one-way wall, and it's stopping. Now, it knows the distance between the player and the object that it's hitting, in this case the one-way wall. So what it does is, since it determines that there is a distance further that it can travel because this isn't a solid wall, it then spawns another ray, just like a minuscule amount ahead of it, and that's the new position for the ray, and then it just sends out a second ray cast that is the remaining length of what the original should be. And then it can detect anything past it. There are still some problems with that. For instance, if two objects' colliders are perfectly overlapping, no amount of repeating rays can ever determine what those two objects are. If they're overlapping, it will only see one of them. And I have some other systems in place for that. That was a real pain to figure out, and part of what I've been struggling with this for the past 2 weeks. But we are finally there, more or less, I believe. Okay, that was so much talking, and there's so much more to say. My body is killing me. Oh, it hates this so much. Alright, so if we take away these cubes and these walls, what you might have seen was that the player has some bonus features over the traditional sort of moving and jumping. And that is a dash system is in place already, as well as a wall jumping system. So if I just spawn in some walls, let's do some one-way walls. Oops. As long as the player is next to a wall and you jump, the player will jump off of the wall. So, unlike some platformers where you have to hold sort of into the wall, moving into the wall in order to jump off of it, I don't like that system. It has advantages. It inherently has some more precision to it. because it's more of the player's input that determines whether you should wall jump or just normal jump. I'm okay with that loss of precision, and it could always be optional as well for a more fluid system, in my opinion. And so the player will wall jump automatically as long as they're directly next to a wall. Alongside that, though, there is a slow falling option, and to activate that, you have to be holding into the wall. So if you're next to the wall, you won't automatically slow fall, but you will automatically jump off. And I just split up those two systems because I think inherently this works and feels better and is a much sort of smoother and streamlined experience, which that's the kind of platformers that I love the most. Ones that their emphasis is really on movement and chaining together movement and stuff, rather than more like hyper precision or something like that. Things like the Ori games are excellent examples of it. The movement, especially in that second game, phenomenal. I mean, Ori and the Will of the Wisps is one of the best games that I have ever played, and one of the most beautiful games I've ever played, bar none. It is so good. So good. I was a little bit worried because they seem to be taking quite a few... Well, worried is a strong way to phrase it, but they seem to be taking a lot of elements from sort of like Hollow Knight in the second Ori as opposed to the first one, and I was a little bit worried that it might lose its identity a bit because the first one was so good for what it was, but no, it was just about perfect, in my opinion anyway. It's just excellent. So yeah, wall jumps, wall sliding, and then a dash system, which currently is unlimited. It's just in place to have it. At some point there will be specific limits or use cases for it, but not currently. It's in there. And that lets you dash in any direction. Obviously on keyboard it's only the cardinal directions, but 8-way cardinal directions, that is. All right. Let's see. What else do we have? So much more to go. And, well, I said I wasn't going to get to all of it. On the other hand, I might as well try. I'm probably only going to be streaming for an hour because I'm just trying to get back into this, and it's real rough on my body. It would help if I wasn't just nonstop rambling and talking, but here we are. Okay, so we have bounce pads. Those are checkpoints. These are, if I just build like that and place you there. Those are sort of like the fireballs in some of the Mario games where it just tracks around the object. It's an obstacle that tracks around, whose system, that's surprisingly difficult to get to work right, and it still needs some work, but it mostly is functional. We have, actually, let's put the bounce pads over here. There's pressure plates, which still need a major rework, spikes, which damage you, the tunnels bent over, turrets that track you and fire bouncing projectiles or lasers. You have coins, which are pickups. This is the end of level goal. This is the basic enemy, and by basic enemy, all it does is, it's basically just a box that moves on its own, left and right. And when it hits a physical stopping point, it will turn and move in the other direction. Nothing too interesting there as of yet. And then this is a wind tunnel. Anything caught within it will have a constant force applied to it. I guess I can put one of those in. And then there's just a simple shader graph attached to it. Not that you can see it with this background, like, at all. Like, it's technically visible, but... But yeah, I don't know. You can see the wind pushing, and then you can see that going. There's currently no interaction with the player. I'll just roll right through, but it exists. It's a thing. All of those can be placed and removed as easily as that. You can also do mass placements, like that. Mass removals. That is a fun sort of box select feature that is in there. What else? Oh, right. A huge one, moving platforms. So originally I was going to have a specific block be the moving platform sort of block, and then things could be attached to it, but that would sort of be the engine or the operating thing that moved around. Instead, I actually built it as a system, so any block or collection of blocks can be moving platforms, and moving platform is... It really should be... the name needs to be changed, because it essentially just allows you to draw a path of movement for anything, and then there are options for it to physically collide with stuff, and some other options, like being clamped to the path, which allows it to be pushable by the player or weighed down by objects, so you can have like falling platforms based on the weight of what is on them. But I'll just show it off. So you place a block down, and then you move over to the Paths Edit mode, select it, and then you can just draw a path. And at any point, you can edit said path. And the path will automatically loop as long as the start of the path and the end of the path connect or are one block away from each other on the grid. It will automatically set to loop. Otherwise, it will bounce back and forth along the path. Right. You got to set it to auto move and physical collisions. Now you might be wondering, if auto move is an option, why would it move on its own when auto move was off? It's a very, very good question. And once I figure it out, I'll let you know. There we go. So, this is how moving platforms work. Anything that is movable that lands on them is automatically parented to them, so the movement of the object itself remains intact. It just inherits the movement of the block that it's on. And, yeah, you move around. It can be physically stopped if there's something in its way, like, let's say I edited the path to instead come down this away. That should work. It'll automatically push the player or whatever's in its way. The moving platforms currently don't respond or react to weight of objects. Not sure if I'm going to program that into place or if I'm okay with it just full on pushing. But if I were to jump out of the way, you'd see moving platform reach the end of its path, and it will just continue as it goes. Can ride around on that. Fun times. Yes, that is moving platforms. There is also rotating platforms. Haven't been updated to the current system, but they should still be functional, I think. They won't actually be functional. Well, they'll be sort of functional. If we just remove that path and delete that. Right, this is the rotator, and if you select that and then parent objects to it, based upon their distance, it will automatically adjust the sort of rotational speed, and the objects will always face up. So as you can see, there's a... It's not updated, so the player now loses all control over themselves. But it's a fun little ride. And using both moving platforms and these systems, they can be combined together. Gets a little wonky at times, but they can be combined together, so you can have moving sections while attached to a rotating platform and vice versa. And boy, does that get complicated really fast. But it is possible, and it works, more or less. So essentially, the reason that this one's broken and moving platforms isn't is that once any object that is movable or that could move itself lands on a platform, it is parented to that platform, but also it disables its own sort of update loop. So it's no longer sort of running itself. It will wait. The moving platform will update itself. It will move. Then it will call all of the other objects in order. And the reason for that is that there are issues. It gets complex, but basically it's just so that because everything has to happen in a specific order, or everything does happen in an order, you just want to make sure that the movements align properly for collisions and stuff. So that's a way of overriding that. Rotating platforms have not been updated, so when the player lands on them, it stops calling its update functions, but the rotating object or moving platforms itself never actually get around to calling the player, and so it just stops. It does look cool, though. I forgot how great moving platforms looked and how happy I am with this, because these are also physical. And are they automatically physical? I don't remember. Yes. I was very proud of this. So rotating platforms will also physically react with their environment, which was a lot harder to get set up than it seems like it should have been. But here we are. So I can just delete all of that. And I think, yeah, that's actually most of the things. The only thing left is, so we have a pressure plate. If we put that down there and then put a bunch of blocks up here. Let's say, well, let's put the blocks like here. There. If we go to wires, so currently this is still very rudimentary, but there is a wiring system. So you click on whatever activator, be it a button, pressure plate, or levers, and then you can draw in interactions for it. Like, wait, that might not be how that works. Okay. I was wrong. You don't draw in, you select, and then you select all of the ones that you want to activate. Right now, the only activation is to disable the blocks and re-enable them with a delay between each block. That's all going to get reworked, so it'll be a very dynamic system that will be able to do a whole bunch of different things, but that's the way that works. And then, oh yeah, and then there's the movement system, which allows you to move and rotate whole sections of the level. So if I go like that, move this around, the grid automatically updates and the position of everything updates. And wow, I had so many issues getting things to properly relocate right so that they could be interacted with in the grid. Move that back to, let's see if I just, oh right, I have to select there we go. So if you select a group of objects and hit the rotate key, all of those objects will rotate on their individual axes. If you select a bunch of objects and then select another block, it'll act as the pivot point for the rotation. And again, everything will update accordingly, and you can just sort of move that around. And that is a very prime level editor tool right there. Presumably, I don't know. I haven't actually built levels really yet. I've just been building systems. It seems very good. But yeah, that's actually about where the whole system is at. Um, you have your raycasting system. You have all of your blocks and level building stuff. You have your 4 different edit modes. Being able to move, build, uh, rotate, create movement paths, all that jazz. That's about everything that is set up so far. And where are we at on time? 45 minutes. I have 15 more minutes to absolutely kill my throat and core. Excellent. Actually, I'll probably wrap it up a little bit before then. However, um, yeah, the hope is that since I've covered all of this, I won't feel the need to. I know I don't have to, but I won't feel the need to in future streams, provide I do them and I guess don't die here after this one. But so I will not. I'll be able to go longer without killing myself quite as much. But anyway. So, the future goals for this whole project is basically just to continue developing things out um, and adding to it, really. There's no real other goals. It's just sort of a hobby system that I'm working on. There's no clear game that I'm working towards. There's no sort of general goal for the project. There originally was a goal to learn level design so I could eventually use it to make a game, but at this point, I'm just having fun. Just taking it as I go, trying to learn as much as I can about as many things as I can. And yeah, then when I finally do have a game idea, be it a platformer or something else, I will have many more tools and experience to create it. Till then, we have this. Yeah, that's about it. Some of the next things that I want to work on are stairs and slabs that will be traversable, so you'll be able to the player will be able to move just horizontally into the stairs or the slabs and be pushed up so long as they're shallow enough. I want to build in that system. I have some ideas for that. Shouldn't be too hard. But nothing ever really goes according to plan, so stairs and slabs, I want to do a whole combat system. I want to have the sort of basics for the combat system will be a dodge move of some sort, a sort of block or counter, probably not a block, a parry system. So I want a dodge system, a parry system, and then some level of combo attacking system. Things like, knocking the enemy into the air, going with them, doing some sort of 3-hit attack combo or something, same on the ground. Nothing terribly complex, but just something that feels really good is the goal. Simple, but really feels good to use. Yeah, so combat system, slabs and stairs. I need to create some actual enemy AI that does some stuff. No idea what that's going to look like. It will probably come sort of during / after the combat system. And oh, right, and a major rework and expansion on the activatables and wiring systems. So completely reworking pressure plates, adding in doors and other activatables, making it so different objects can be turned on and off, like these wind tunnels or turrets or all sorts of things. That's going to be a whole big thing to get into, as I'm not sure exactly how I want to structure it to make it sort of as intuitive and easy as possible to build using the level editor, while still giving as much sort of control and diversity as possible for options for the different elements, both the different activators and the different activatables. Um, the big thing that I want to do is weighted pressure plates. So uh, you have to for like puzzles where you have to move certain boxes or certain amounts of boxes of certain weights onto the pressure plate in order to activate them. That's a big thing that I want to add. I basically have a lot of plans. I'm not sure which I'm going to tackle when. I guess whatever strikes my fancy. And then there's, yeah, just a lot of random stuff that I want to sort of experience with this project. It's just using it to learn really as much as I can and hopefully explore and learn about game dev, be it level design, creating compelling platformer levels, compelling goals, goal orientated game design, and combat design. While I have developed games with combat systems before, none of them have been good at all. So the hope is to create something that actually feels good. That's sort of the name of the game, is creating gameplay that feels really smooth and what's a good word for it? Flow. Gameplay flow. That is key to me. It's not necessary for every game. It shouldn't be the focus of every game. But for me, games just, when they have good flow in their gameplay, especially with movement systems and stuff, just takes things to a whole different level. So that's really the name of the game, and really the only directing force for this project is flow for the gameplay. Okay, I've gone over basically everything about this game, where I'm at, future plans, coming back to streaming. Oh yeah, actually I should mention, there will be no schedules for the streams, and there will be no sort of set amount of time that each stream will take place, or that will go on for, no duration. I would like to do more than an hour. An hour I would like to be the minimum, but I'll do whatever is best for my health so I don't burn out terribly once again. And no schedule, because my health is currently a mess and it does not respond to schedules at all. Actually, it laughs in the face of them and actively tries to destroy them. So yeah. Yeah, that's about that. It is it's great to be back. Honestly, I really miss doing this sort of stuff. So yeah, that's going to be all for today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for showing up. Fantastic. And anyone else who either hopped in or watches the VOD. Great to have you, and hopefully you'll come back and check out the next time. Till then, I've been the Chronic Phoenix, and this has been some sort of game dev.